love to decorate with pumpkins in the fall. What about you? Hi, my name is Leslie and welcome to Happy Tuesday, where we do crafts and DIY and home decor and more. Today I have for you 7 bougie looking pumpkins that you can make on budget supplies. Now, don't forget to stick around until the very end and I'll have a hint on one of next week's projects. So grab your favorite fall beverage and let's get to crafting. Let's take a quick sneak peek into all of our projects for today. I am so excited to share these with you, and that will bring us to project number 1. Look at these cutie patootie pumpkins. We are going to start with the little copper scrubbing pads. I found these at the Dollar Tree. Honestly, if I were to do this over again, I'm not sure I would use these copper ones. I would love to have found the plastic scouring pads. I think those might have been a better option, but I do like the way these have a really stiff feel inside the pumpkin. So I'm going to cut it apart, kind of take out the middle and then cut it in half, and I am going to make 2 pumpkins out of this one little copper scouring pad. Now the cool part about this is, if you watched last week's video, of course I made some little yarn pumpkins, and I'm going to use some of that same yarn. And that's a cool part about, making all your own decor, is you can really make it to match itself, and it feels like really one big cohesive decor pattern. I love that. So we are just going to wrap that yarn around and around and around. Now this is that kind of fluffy yarn you can buy at the Dollar Tree in their little yarn section. And once you've got as much yarn around there as you want, I just wanted to make sure that all that copper was covered up and that it had a nice feel to it. I'm going to cut that end and just glue it down with a little bit of hot glue. Then I'm going to add a bunch of hot glue at the end of this little copper scouring pad piece and hold that together until it is firmly in place. Then, of course, my backyard store provided me with the little twig for my stem there and a little leaf out of my greenery, and I made another one with another color of yarn and added a little bit of moss to this one just for some different texture. And I love the way these turned out. What do you guys think? Super simple. I know you can do it. And that'll bring us to project number 2. This is another super simple one and also is going to match with our decor. I'm going to take some ivory chalk paint, and the other one I believe is hazelnut, and I am going to take some tumbling tower blocks and give them a nice coat. Now I actually covered all but one of them with the ivory paint because I am going to add the hazelnut on top of the ivory, and I didn't give it full coverage. I kind of love that rustic look. And then we're going to start gluing them together. So we'll glue 2 together and another 2 together, and then glue the third one on top. And then you're going to take those last 3, and our little stem centerpiece is going to be a little bit taller than the other 2 pieces. And then we're going to glue all of this together. So for each pumpkin, you will need 9 of the tumbling tower blocks. Once we've gotten that side glued together, we are going to glue the other side, and I'm just using that wood glue by Super Glue that you can buy at the Dollar Tree. Then once we've got that together, I'm just going to add another greenery leaf that I have in my craft supplies. I'm going to top off that little pumpkin with a little bit more white, kind of dry brushed it on there. And then we're going to go with some of this little reindeer moss that you can buy at the Dollar Tree and add that as the topper for this pumpkin. Thinks it needs one more thing, so I am going to grab some wire and we are going to make little curly cute tendrils to go on top of our pumpkin. I'm just going to use some of this little black wire. I bought it in a package with a whole bunch of other wires. I want to say I bought this on Temu, but if I can find something similar on Amazon, I will link that below. And I'm just going to add that in there and then cover it up with some of that greenery. Take one of my little skewer sticks and give it a little twirl there. You can use a pencil or a paintbrush, whatever you've got. And I love the way these turned out. Now here is the, I guess it's like maybe a burnt sienna Art Deco acrylic. And I'm just gonna dry brush that on top of the dry brushed white until I get the color that I like. And then I am going to add a little ribbon onto this one, a little green with some white instead of leaves, give it a different texture and a different look. And look at how these turned out. I am loving them, and I love that little rustic look to them and how they can just be decorated in any kind of form or fashion that you desire to go with your decor. I just wanted to pop in here real quick and say thank you. I appreciate that you're spending time with me, and I hope you're enjoying the content. Now, if you're not already a subscriber, I hope you'll consider hitting that subscribe button and clicking the bell below. You will help my channel grow, and it doesn't cost you anything. Give today's video a big old thumbs up, share it with your friends, and comment down below. Now, let's get back to crafting. That brings us to project number 3, and this is one of my favorites of this video. I love how soft and squishy these are, and my husband thinks they are very sellable. So if you're looking for something to make to sell at a craft bazaar or you know, a little arts and craftsy thing, this might be your project. We are going to take this little Dollar Tree chamois, and these are still $1.25, at least at my Dollar Tree. And I'm going to glue the inside edges together. And I just picked, you know, which side I felt like was the softest and made that the outside piece and the other side the inside piece. Once we've gotten that done, I am going to take some of my twine right there, and we are going to gather up one of the ends and tie that together. That will be our bundled end. Now you won't see this twine because it's going to be on the inside. We'll snip that off and then push that onto the inside. That'll give us kind of the bottom wrinkles of your pumpkin. Now I use cheap Walmart pillows for my stuffing, and I'm just going to take some of that pillow stuffing and throw it in there until I've got this as fluffy and stuffed as I want. You know, this is really a personal preference kind of thing. I like it to have a lot of stuffing but still be really soft. I don't want it on the hard side. And then we are going to gather all that top part together and tie it off with another piece of twine. In hindsight, I probably would have just used that brown yarn, and that way I wouldn't have to cover up the twine as I was building my little pumpkin pieces there. But we're going to tie on that brown yarn, and then we are going to go around the pumpkin, I want to say 8 different times, and give that, you know, those pumpkin little grooves to it. Now I did the 4 and then tied it off, and we are going to do another 4 and tie it off. But as we're tying it off, we are going to wrap that yarn around and around our gathered piece of material there until we get all the way to the top, and that is going to be our stem or peduncle. Love that word, peduncle. So much fun. Anyway, just keep wrapping it. Once you get it as completely wrapped as you want, I want to cover up all the white. I also wanted to, you know, gather all that material into something that was more stem-like and not so wide. And then I'm going to start gluing once we get to the top to secure that. And then once that's all secured, we will trim that off and give it one last piece of one last tack of glue there to hold it all together. And you can also, once you've gotten the top part done, just take that yarn and go back down. Now I didn't buy any yarn for this particular project. I just used what I had on hand. I want to say this yarn probably came from Hobby Lobby or Michael's. Well, maybe even Walmart. I don't know. I was making blankets for a while, and it's left over from that. And once we got that done, then I took this piece of fabric that I got from Dollar Tree, and I'm just using that whole little roll. The one end, well, both ends were kind of raggedy, and so I'm going to give it a good seam first so that I don't have a raggedy piece on the edge before I glue those edges together. And we're essentially making this pumpkin the same as the other. Now, this particular fabric that I found at the Dollar Tree had definitely the fall vibes going for it, and it really feels more like flannel. So you can use whatever fabric that you want to use. We just glued the outside edges together and then flipped it inside so we can gather it just like we did the other pumpkin. And then we are going to stuff it, and essentially it's exactly the same as the other pumpkin in putting it together. I just wanted to show you that you could use one of those whole rolls of fabric from the Dollar Tree and make a pumpkin out of that as well. And these colors went really well with all my decor, and this yarn was something I used for other pumpkins last week. So if you didn't see that, I will have that video linked below as well. But check out these pumpkins. I love them, and they are going to be beautiful additions to my pillows in my little window seat. So excited for that. And that brings us to project number 4. I love this one too. I just love all the textures. So we are going to start with a piece of cardboard, and I am just grabbing all my little plastic lids to figure out what size circles I want and drawing those out with my pencil. Then I'm going to use my cardboard scissors. Love these cardboard scissors. I'll have them linked below too. I bought those on Amazon. We're going to cut out all these circles of cardboard. These scissors make it feel like you're just cutting through butter. Super simple. And then I'm going to take this wood plaque piece that I bought at the Dollar Tree and some wooden beads for legs. And I just colored those with some antique wax. Did I use antique wax? No, I did not. I used gel stain that I bought from Michaels in their paint section. It was like 69 cents, super cheap. And then this rope I bought at Walmart, and we used that on a project earlier this summer that we made a big old bowl that is sitting in the center of my dining table with some fruit in it. I'll have that video linked below too in case you didn't catch that one, but we are just going to glue this rope all the way around our little cardboard piece there, and because this piece will be able to be seen from the front and the back, I am also going to glue this rope all the way around the front and the back of my cardboard. Now if you don't want to do that, you could cover up the back of the cardboard maybe with a little bit of paint or maybe some fabric, you know, whatever goes with your vibe. And if you don't have any of this leftover rope, you can use that Dollar Tree nautical rope. That will work really well for this project. But you can see once I've gotten it all kind of glued around the front, I'm going to hit some glue there on the edges and then continue gluing it all the way around in a circle. And we're going to do this 3 times for all 3 of our pumpkins. I bought this rope at Walmart. Yeah, it was at Walmart. And you know, the thing I love about it, it is very sturdy. And honestly, I have to cut it with my cardboard scissors because my regular scissors just don't want to go through it. It kind of feels almost like, you know, it needs to be cut with wire cutters. It is really stiff and sturdy, which is great, you know, for particular projects that you want that sturdiness. The other thing about it is, you know, the little flyaways that you get on rope or twine. This has them too, but it just seemed to have a lot more of them. So I did end up having to burn all that off. I don't remember whether I showed you that right this particular moment or not, but I did take a lighter and burned all those edges off, and it was a much more labor-filled project than, you know, doing it off of that Dollar Tree nautical rope or twine. But I did that with all 3 of my pumpkins and still had a little bit left over. And so to kind of bring the pumpkin vibe down on our board and finish off our edges a little bit, we're going to wrap some of that rope right around the front of our board and get that glued down with a nice glob of hot glue. I did hold that corner really good for a second so that we made sure that it stayed put. And then I did not glue it across the back, although I did have enough of this material left to do that. I wasn't sure how I was going to secure the pumpkins to the board at this point, so I thought maybe I needed to save a little bit of that rope in case that became the vehicle, but it didn't. And here you can see I am using my lighter to burn off all those edges. I felt like that made painting much easier. And I painted them with that same acrylic color in the brown, the sienna, I think it is, and then the pumpkin colored chalk paint by Waverly and the ivory colored chalk paint by Waverly. But you can paint these guys whatever color matches with your decor. Then, of course, my outdoor store provided me the peduncles or stems, and then I just grabbed whatever ribbons I had. I had a little checked ribbon from Walmart. No, that came from Dollar Tree. And then I had this little wired burlap ribbon. I think that came from Michael's. Can't be too certain, but you can use whatever you want. If you wanted to make tendrils, that's kind of what that look was. And then I used some of that ribbon that I bought at an estate sale. And then we're going to add a little button on top and glue those on in front of all 3 of our pumpkins. Now I just used the same ribbons for all of them, but you can do different ribbons if you want, add a few on some and a few different on the others. I did have different buttons. And when it finally came down to it, I decided to use the Dollar Tree tumbling tower blocks to hold the pumpkins in place. I'm going to use one in the front and one in the back. Glue that with a little bit of that wood glue by Super Glue and some hot glue, and then a bunch of hot glue on the bottom of our pumpkin to set that in between. Now, no worries, you won't be able to see that when we're all done. We are going to grab some moss and cover all that up. But you can see I was kind of deciding where to put my tumbling tower blocks so that everything fit in a way I wanted it to look. And here's some of that moss. I love this Spanish moss. I love the way that it looks. It gives it that kind of rusticy, homey look. And so we're just going to tuck that in and cover up all those tumbling tower blocks and give us kind of that nice little rustic vibe around our pumpkins, because we're going to grab a couple of pine cones and an acorn and add that in. Now these are actual real ones, but if you don't have real ones, you can use whatever you have in your craft supplies just to add a little bit of extra detail and decor on the bottom of this display here. And once we get all that glued down with our hot glue, this project is complete. Now you can add any other details, it might be cute with some fairy lights around it, whatever you want. But I love the way this turned out. I think it is so stinking cute, and I am loving the way it sits on my little shelf with my tiered tray. It's just the perfect addition. And that brings us to project number 5. I am just going to use up some scrap fabrics that I've got, and I just picked some orange colors and that little happy fall sign. Now don't throw that pumpkin away once you've pulled it off, because we are going to use that. And then I punched the back out, removed those nails or little staple things in there, and the back, where you could see the little piece where you hang it up. And then I grabbed some scrap burlap. This came from the Dollar Tree. And we are going to grab some Mod Podge and give it a generous coat on the bottom of this. and we're just going to add some texture to the back of this frame instead of painting it. Now you're welcome to do whatever suits your decor, but I thought the burlap with the fabric would be a really cute addition. Now once you get all that covered with the Mod Podge, we're going to set that aside, and then I'm just going to cut these in pieces that are about 1.5 1.25 inches, somewhere like that. Instead of cutting all the way through, we are just going to tear those. That just adds to the texture and dimension for this. And like I said, we're just going to use a bunch of little scrap fabrics and get all those cut. Then I was going to take that ivory chalk paint and paint our frame, but the top of the frame just was missing something for me. So I grabbed some of my little tiny beads that I didn't know what I was going to use them for anyway. And we are going to run beads all the way along the top edge of this frame and just, again, give it some more texture and some more detail and interest, and make it look a little fancier than just this, MDF wood board piece of frame here. And so we're just gonna use some hot glue and glue those beads all the way along. Now they do have the centers in them, so you can either fill those in if you want or just cover it up with paint, whatever you choose to do. But once we've gotten all that on there, then I'm going to grab that ivory chalk paint and go ahead and give everything a good, nice coat. I actually think I might have used 2 coats there. Then I'm going to take my scissors now that that Mod Podge has dried, and we're going to get a nice clean edge along the sides of that really thick cardboard piece backing to our frame. Now, no worries that we threw away those little nails, because we're just going to throw in some wood glue there and some dabs of hot glue for the instant hold. And there's a little indention in this particular frame, so we just pop that right in there with some glue, and that is going to hold beautifully. Now, to put together our little pumpkin, I am just going to take some hot glue and glue our strips together in alternating fashion. Now I have 5 different fabrics. You can choose, 1 fabric, 2 fabrics, how many ever different color fabrics you want that go with your decor. And then you can see we're just going to twist it together. I have this little plastic lid, and it is the perfect size circle for inside of this frame. And so I am going to start twisting and then hot glue and rolling this up into a circle. Just keep twisting and rolling and twisting and rolling, and hot glue in between. And if you don't want that hot glue all over your fingers, you probably want to grab some little silicone fingers, and that way you're not messing with that hot glue on your fingers. Be careful too as you're gluing this together, because of course that hot glue is hot. But you can see I'm just going to twist that fabric around and just keep rolling it and twisting it and rolling it. And I think I've said that more than once, so I'm going to stop saying that. But you can see how this is coming together, and I can measure it against that circle inside, and that way I'll know when I've reached the conclusion of how large it needs to be for my particular frame. I thought the cool part about this was being able to use up some of those scrap pieces of fabric that you just don't know what to do with, but you don't want to throw them away because, we're crafters. So here's where that little happy fall thing comes into play. I wanted to give this some dimension. It just looked super flat against that burlap. And so I am going to glue that right onto that pumpkin, and I know that pumpkin sits inside there, and it covered it up perfectly. Grabbing another piece of twig from my outdoor store, I added that into the top to make it look like that peduncle, then a couple of leaves. Lastly, I am going to add some of this raffia and tie that up into a knot for the final piece of interest in there, and trim that off so that everything is laying inside the frame. Made a little bow there out of the raffia, and then I will add some hot glue onto those little, I want to say they were foam pieces. And here it is, all complete. I love the way this turned out, and I love those fabrics and just the interest in the pumpkin. And that brings us to project number 6. Guys, this is super simple. So we're going to take some of those canning jar lids and we are going to spray them. That's a rustic pumpkin color, and we're just going to spray them all with a nice coat of that spray paint. And then take some twine and put them all together. Now I made sure they were all facing in the same direction. That will help when you tie it together for them to look more pumpkin-y. And you know, don't worry if you don't have all complete coverage. You know, you just roll them around and that's great. And then I tied that twine together and just shoved that inside. You will see it later. I should have just trimmed it off, but I didn't. Just shoved it inside there, and then I took 3 of those cinnamon sticks and used that for my peduncle on this. Then we're going to take some of this twine covered wire that I bought at the Dollar Tree. It really isn't my favorite, but I'm trying to use it up. I just want something with some texture for our tendrils on this. And then I have some of this Dollar Tree pumpkin ribbon. It is the wired kind that I bought a couple of years ago. We're going to use this on the next 2 projects. That way, you know, that kind of ties that all together. And it's the same kind of colors we're using for all the rest of the decor. Using a little piece of raffia, I tied that together into a nice pretty bow, and then we're going to make a nice bow out of this raffia to glue on top of that other ribbon. We are going to dovetail the ends of our ribbon because I love the way that looks, and that way you can kind of trim those down. Now we're going to put our piece in for the tendrils, but realize that everything's kind of loosey-goosey in there, so we're going to add some hot glue onto the cinnamon sticks, and then we're also going to add some hot glue underneath that twine wrapped wire. Then we're going to use one of our little skewer sticks and curly cue up our tendrils. Be careful, you may need to glue that wire and the twine back together in order for it to sit perfectly. And then a big old dab of hot glue onto our bow, and I am loving this. I actually bought these canning jar lids, I don't know, I want to say 3 years ago to make this project before I even started my channel, a year or so before I even started my channel. And I am so happy I finally got this done. Crafting from our stash this year. That brings us to our final project, project number 7. I bought these giant tumbling tower blocks on clearance at Big Lots when they were going out of business, got them super cheap, and have just been waiting for the right projects to use them. And so we're going to use 6 of them today and make this beautiful pumpkin. I love the way it looks to have stained wood and then paint over top of it, and you can kind of get that kind of dry brushed look and, you know, not complete coverage. I love that rusticy kind of look, so that's what we're doing, using that same ivory color. No, I think this is a plaster colored paint by Waverly, but it matches with all the rest of the decor. And here's our handy dandy miter box and saw, you know, trimming up some of that outdoor store supply. Then I'm going to grab my handy dandy brown stamp ink pad and add a little bit of rustic to the edges. My super glue, wood glue there to glue all the wood pieces together, and it sets up pretty quick. Oops, I guess I got that top piece on the bottom, so we'll just cover that up with a little bit more paint, no worries. Once we've gotten that done, we will glue on our little stem peduncle there. And then I grabbed some of this copper wire to make our little tendrils out of. Now, I originally thought I might want to glue them to the side of that stem, but they weren't really staying. So we are going to stick them in that tiny little hole in between our last 2 tumbling tower blocks. We're going to make that same style ribbon and tie it together with some raffia. I'm also going to make another little raffia bow to go on top of this, just a shoestring bow. So we'll tie this nice and tight and give that a trim. And then once we've gotten that all kind of fluffed out, we are going to give those edges a nice dovetail. Next thing we are going to do is grab some of that raffia, and we are going to use that as kind of the interest piece, adding a little bit more texture into the ribs of our pumpkin, or our little grooves, and those lines in the large tumbling tower blocks are the perfect place to put all that. Just gluing that in, and no worries if you run out, you can just piece that together. Doesn't have to be all one symmetrical piece. And then I'm just gonna kind of glue that in as necessary, making sure we get every one of those hit with a little bit of that raffia. Then I'll go ahead and make that raffia bow. I love the way that turned out. You can see that's where I glued those little tendril pieces onto that twig in there for the stem, and it didn't work out long term. I will take them out and put them in, and I had to use a little my weeding tool from Cricut to kind of poke the holes where I put the raffia in. But then we're going to glue that bow down there and fluff it out, and I am in love with this piece. I'm so excited of how it matches all the rest of the pieces, and I love the size of it. It's, much bigger than the small tumbling tower blocks. If you don't have those large tumbling tower blocks, but you want to make something like that, you could also just use some, little 1x2 boards and cut those to 6 even pieces. But here is our final look at all of today's projects. I love these. I love each of them for different reasons, and I'm so excited that they are one cohesive kind of matching group of pumpkins. Have my little pumpkin patch going on here, and I am just in love with it. Let me know which Wonder Ones are your favorites, which Wonder Ones you might like to try to recreate. Give me some comments down below. I love hearing from you guys, love reading, and I do respond to every single one of your comments, so don't be afraid to leave them. If you make any of these projects, or you would just love to share some of your other projects, send me pictures to happytuesdaydiy@gmail.com. I am so grateful that you hung around with me till the very end. So, as promised, here's your hint on one of next week's projects. You are going to need one of the bamboo cutting boards from the Dollar Tree and one of their little crates. But until then, make it a great day, and as always, Happy Tuesday!